And welcome back, everybody. Hands-on Apologetics. And today, we're going to talk about the Gospels. The Gospels is a frequent target on social media and just, person-to-person relationships. People dismiss the Gospels as fables, folklore, maybe even myths. Some people actually believe that the Gospels are basically pagan myths that have been reworked and re-engineered so that they can come up with this kind of fake quasi-Jewish mythological figure named Jesus. And those are so bizarre, right? How do you answer them? How do you show, no, the Gospels are very serious and you should be taking them as serious literature? Well, that's why I wrote my book, which is called The Gospel Truth, How We Can Know What Christ Taught. And, folks, I write books because I feel that there's a need for them. And one thing that is out there's so many books that are on the subject of reliability in the New Testament. And there's so many great books out there too. I didn't want to tread on ground that was already laid, right? So, for example, usually how the New Testament's vindicated is people will focus on manuscript evidence and show that the manuscripts were written very early on, so they were closer to the events they record than even any other work in antiquity. And there are more manuscripts of the Gospels than any other work in antiquity. And we're not talking a few more. We're talking hundreds, if not thousands more. That's very good for showing that the text we have today is identical to the original. Another tactic that's used, and this is largely by evangelicals, is to go through some of the historic markers that are in the Gospels. For example, whenever it mentions something that is also confirmed in pagan sources, you can show that, well, the Gospels map onto history that is recognized even by the pagans. And there's some very good books out there. Burnett's book, I think that's his name, about the reliability of the Gospels, does that. And he does a really effective job with that. He just shows all these details about the story of Jesus can be affirmed with extra biblical material. And that's very powerful, right? And there's other tactics as well. But one tactic that was never really brought to the fore, and certainly wasn't brought to the fore in terms of popular works on the Gospels, is the fact that the Gospels are strange.
What?
So the earliest fragments we have of the Gospels, earliest complete copies of the Gospels are all in Greek. But when you're reading the Gospels in Greek, folks, it turns out that there's large portions of it scattered throughout the Gospels that don't read as if they're Greek. They read as if they are speaking Hebrew or Aramaic. And this is something that's been known for quite a while. It's nothing controversial in the scholarly world. That is that the Greek Gospels are relying on earlier material written in Aramaic or Hebrew. But I go one step further, and I show that there seems to be formatting going on. Not only in the Greek Gospels, there's a special formatting that's going on in order to call to mind or memory what was done, but even those pre-canonical portions, the earlier stuff that's Semitic and is buried underneath the Gospels, the Greek Gospels, they show evidence of formatting. What's formatting for? It's for accurate recall. I'll give you my favorite example, and it comes from one that us Catholics, we should be familiar with. It's the Benedictus, which is found in Luke 1, verses 70 through 75. To perform mercy promised to our fathers, to remember his holy covenant, the oath in which he swore to our father Abraham. Okay. Nothing special, right? I mean, yeah, it is important, but nothing really jumps at us as being unusual. However, when you try to back translate this into Semitic language like Aramaic or Hebrew, you find something very interesting going on. because the word that's translated to show mercy in Hebrew, its root is Hanan, okay? Which just so happens to be the same root as the word Yohanan or John, okay? Then you have the next line, to remember. The Hebrew there is zakar, to remember, which happens to be the same root for the name Zechariah. Zechariah. You can hear Zakar in the middle of there. And the next line, to swear an oath, is Shabbat, which happens to be the same root that the name Elizabeth, Elisheba, is based. So here we have to show mercy, to remember, to swear an oath in the Benedictus happens to correspond to the roots of the names John, Zechariah, and Elizabeth. To me, that just blows my mind that you have this kind of formatting there. And you can see where the power of that comes from, because all you have to do is just remember the three main protagonists in the story that you just read, right? John the Baptist, Zechariah, and Elizabeth. And you can recall these three lines in the Benedictus. Now, is this on purpose? Yeah, it has to be on purpose. There's no way. Well, it shows us that this pre-canonical source that we're reading in the Greek was formatted for memory. Like I said, there's probably about a dozen of these, maybe a little bit more, that we know for a fact exist. But I'm sure there's more and more than that. Just simply because, when you back translate things, you can use different words. So we're not really sure the exact words that are used. But if there's a word play or something like that, that we can detect what word is being used. And in this case, we know those three words are being used. So that, I think, should cause people to pause, right? Number one, the Gospels are not always speaking Greek like the original readers would understand it, but they occasionally speak with a Hebrew accent or Aramaic accent. Number two, there appears to be memory formatting going on. And number three, some of this memory formatting was not in the Greek, but it was actually in the earlier material. So what does this tell us? Well, this tells us that the roots of the Gospels, the things that the Gospels are relying on, was constructed in such a way as to be accurately recalled and passed on. And to me, that shows that this can't be folklore. This can't be myth. This can't even be a purposeful, hoax or amalgamation of pagan myths put together to tell a unique story of someone that maybe never even existed. All of that, I think, is off the table. Why? Because no one would go through all this engineering and then hide the engineering in order to perpetrate a hoax. That's just mind-blowing. In fact, it's so over-engineered that it's just implausible that this could have been done that way. The formatting was there on purpose. Why? Because there was a concerted effort to pass on things accurately. And then at that point, you can then go and say, okay, well, let's look at some of the historical claims. Let's look at the manuscript evidence. And that fills in really the rest of the story. But unless you know about this formatting and the Greek Gospels and all that, you kind of lose a big portion of the story.